Yes. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start. It's just past 7:45. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the Hustings for West Hampstead and Fortune Green. So many people. Is that a shipment of apples? Is that okay? Is that, you can't hear me? Can you? Let's try that. If it happens again, just mute number one.
Okay.
We'll try again. Thanks. I'll try something here. Thank you all for coming. I'm Jonathan Turton. I run West Hampstead Live. Done so for 5 years and tweet as Hampstead on Twitter. I'm sure most of you know one of those two things. I realise you're missing Game of Thrones for this. I can promise you at least as much political intrigue, about half as much violence, but categorically no nudity. If that is a problem, then now is the time to leave. We're live streaming this. Tom is doing over there. We are live streaming this. It's going out on YouTube at the moment. I hope, fingers crossed. Just be aware of that for you guys as well. And we also have at least one journalist here, in the form of Richard from the CNJ. Refreshments are, as you see, are over there. Help yourself through the evening if you'd like to. That's fine. There's wine and biscuits and God knows what else, and weak lemon squash. Also wanted to thank Paramount Properties, who have funded a lot of this because we have to pay for obviously the hire and all the equipment and stuff. Tom comes free because he's a nice guy, but everything else we have to pay for. Want to clarify that all the local election candidates have been invited from all the parties across West Hampstead and Fortune Green wards. That's 26 people in total. As you see, not quite all of them are here. Most of them are here. We'll run through a little bit roll call in a minute. And just to kind of clarify to anyone why we're actually here, this is for the election for ward councillors for West Hampstead and Fortune Green. That's 3 councillors for each ward. The incumbent councillors are all Liberal Democrats. The party with the most number of councillors in Camden ends up in Camden Council. That's currently the Labour Party. And the election is May 22nd, as I'm sure you all know. Right, we're going to try and do a roll call of everyone. We'll do it ward by ward, just slightly. If you just raise your hand or stand up or something, I'll turn it back through this as I go through everyone. So we'll test my memory as well, as much as anything else. We're going to start with. No. Okay. Do I need a microphone? Turn it off. Do I need a microphone? That's the microphone's on. Can you mute it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I need a microphone?
Yes. Yes.
Just stand over there.
Okay. Maybe I'll stand over the side. Maybe that works. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is good. This is good. Okay. We didn't have time for these sounds. It's ridiculous. It's not all about me. It's ridiculous. let me just try switching mics. Is that off, Keith? Okay, let's see if that works. I'll turn that on again. Where was I? Okay, roll call of candidates. I do have a cheat sheet here. We're going to run through these in the order they're on the website, which is related to the order that the votes came in last time. So for West Hampstead, we have the Liberal Democrats, these are the existing councillors, John Bryant, Keith Moffat, Julian Risso-Gill. It's really annoying.
Those two rear speakers, it might work better. Keep these two, switch them off. These speakers are speaking straight into your microphone.
That's a good point. If I knew how to do that, I would totally do that. Do we have any ideas?
I got no idea.
No.
I really don't know.
No. Okay, we're going to try. We'll have to try and live with this for the time being. Okay, I'm gonna shout. I can shout, I think. Sorry, so that was the Liberal Democrats. John,
Vicky, Gillian. For Conservatives in West Hampstead, we have Natalie Eliadis there. We have Nick Grierson or Grierson? Grierson. Nick Grierson. And Andrew Sale. For Labour, we don't have Angela Plover. She does send her apologies. She's got a school governors meeting she has to attend. So Angela's not here. We do have Chris Rosenberg and James Yard. Unfortunately, we have none of the Green candidates of West Hampstead here. I'm sure they also send their apologies. They are Richard Griffiths, Zane Hannan, and Quentin Tyler. Here we have for UKIP, Magnus Nielsen, and we have Dave Pearce for the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. That's West Hampstead. If you're a West Hampstead person, those are your candidates. Fortune Green, same order pretty much. For the Liberal Democrats, we have Nancy Brewer, Dick Ray, and we have Nick Russell. For the Conservatives, we have Ian Cohen, and Parkinson, Tom Smith. For Labour and the Cooperative Party, and they can explain why that's a thing if they want to. We have Richard Olszewski, Lorna Russell, and Phil Turner. The Green Party, we have Juan Jimenez, and Leila Mars, and Lucy Oldfield, the other Green candidate, also sent her apologies. There are no other candidates in Fortune Green. We have two additional parties, UKIP and Trade Union Socialists, for West Hampstead. Those are your candidates. We're now going to give each party 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, to pitch you why you should vote for them. We're going to do that in the same order, basically. So we're going to start with the Democrats, go around. They've each nominated one person to do that. I'm going to time them. You literally have 3 minutes. I'll put this on for you, and let's see what happens.
Can I have a test run?
You can have a test run, yes.
Just want to see if this makes any weird and wonderful noises.
Right. See if that sounds okay, I think.
Great.
Okay, all right, we're going to start you in a second. I need to get my timer up. No messing around here. Okay, 3 minutes. The time key starts now.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. We now know why we hold the area forums in the synagogue hall and not in here, although it's a very beautiful hall. This reminds me a bit of an area forum, which lots of you turn up on a regular basis. It's one of the things we're very proud of. When the Liberal Democrats were leading the council, we introduced the area forum, and West Hampstead and Fortune Green have the one that's most well attended. And it's a way of bringing people together in the local area and letting them have their say. I want to talk in a way about the sort of councillors we are, rather than give you a potted version of our manifesto, which you can read online. But we're councillors who stick up for West Hampstead. We all live locally, and for many years we've been reminding people that West Hampstead is important. The town hall is a long way away down on Euston Road, and when Flick first became a councillor in 1986, she built a career on jumping up and down and reminding people that West Hampstead was important. The very first issue of our Spotlight leaflet, which we've been distributing for many years, was called, it had a headline saying West Where, showing a puzzled bureaucrat. And that used to be the fate of West Hampstead. We spent many years fighting for West Hampstead. It's become a better place for it, we believe. The fight isn't over. It still feels like West Hampstead gets the short straw sometimes. So, for example, the offices, the empty offices sitting opposite the Thameslink station mean that there's no longer a place where people in West Hampstead and the Kilburn area can go and get face-to-face advice about their problems. We promised that there will be some dedicated local facilities, for example, in the library. That's just not happening at the moment. We think it's not good enough. The people from this area have to go all the way down to the south of the borough if they want to see somebody face-to-face. Another simple example of something we've done in the past was the toilets were closed down on West End Green, and when we ran the council, we made sure that we reopened them. So we've got a history of sticking up for West Hampstead, and we've carried on doing that. I particularly want to pay tribute to Gillian Risso-Gill, who's had some very great achievements recently. The number one that she's very well known for is bringing the farmers market to West Hampstead, kicking off the business association. I use the word kicking off very wisely there. We don't aim to run everything. But West Hampstead's got a lot of very capable people in it, and we've helped set up groups like Friends of West Hampstead Library, Friends of the Cemetery, and most recently the Neighbourhood Development Forum. And our model is to help you do things. We arrange set-up meetings and so on, but we think it's up to you, the good citizens of West Hampstead, to actually run things, and that's very much our model. As I say, we all live locally, and as such, we know the problems of the area. So I want to pick on just three particular things we're pledging. One is to sort out the enormous problems with parking and traffic in this area, which everybody knows. We promised to provide an extra police officer for each of the 2 wards. And thirdly, we want to reverse a big chunk of Labour's cuts to street cleaning, because you're all telling us the state of West Hampstead streets is disgusting. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next up, we have the Conservatives, and speaking to them is Ian Cohen. Ian, take it away.
Let me start by thanking you all for coming. It's great to see so many local residents keen to participate in this debate about the future of our community. I'd also like to thank Jonathan for organising tonight's event. I'm Ian Cohen. I've lived in West Hampstead for over 50 years. I attended Bedford School in Quinton Kynaston. I've run local dry cleaning business on West End Lane. This is where I raised my family, and West Hampstead is my home. Your Conservative team has a great range of skills and experience. Andrew Saywell is a former councillor who understands planning and licensing. Natalie is a lawyer with experience in renewable energy. John works in financial communications and is a governor of Hampstead School. Andrew Parkinson is a planning lawyer and a former local teacher. And Nick is a careers consultant who helps local people get jobs. Together, we'll ensure that although West Hampstead is far from Town Hall, we're never far from Town Hall's mind. This is the Conservative. We'll do this by tackling the issues facing West Hampstead and Fortune Green head on. Our streets are frequently not clean enough, with nothing done to tackle fly tipping. There are insufficient parking spaces and not enough enforcement of parking restrictions. West End Lane often feels more like a car park than a road. There is a growing need and demand for more school places and opportunities for our children. We need to do more to support the elderly and vulnerable residents, and development is changing the face of West Hampstead. Our distance from Town Hall makes some people defeatist about delivering results for our community. But we've got a positive vision, and we're optimistic about what we can achieve for West Hampstead. So what will the Conservatives do to tackle these issues? Well, I have some very clear pledges. We will reinstate weekend street cleaning to tackle littering and hold fly tipping offenders to account. We will allow 20 minutes of free parking on Mill Lane and freeze parking charges for a year to support local businesses. We will put more money in your pocket by cutting council tax over 4 years. We will support elderly residents by restoring luncheon clubs, cutting the cost of Meals on Wheels, extending library opening hours. We will back the NDF to ensure that local residents' priorities are taken into account when developments are being considered. We have a costed plan to pay for this, signed off by the Council Finance Director. Instead of cutting services, we cut waste and bureaucracy at the Town Hall. No more keeping premises like Travis Perkins empty. No more propaganda news sheets. No more taxpayer-funded trade union officials. We'll also raise revenue from advertising. By doing this, we would ensure that frontline services are prioritised over a backroom Town Hall interests. Our great team came here tonight to put forward our positive plan for the future of West Hampstead and Fortune Green. We offer a vibrant, fresh alternative that can take our community forward. Thank you.
Bonus points for being bang on time. Next, we have Labour.
Thank you.
Now.
Good evening, everyone. In this election, there is a clear choice between the parties who are cutting in West Hampstead and the party that is investing in West Hampstead. The coalition government has cut my and your council budget by almost 50%. But I'm proud that the Labour Council has sought to fight cuts and very successfully in many cases, but not been defeatist. We've sought to invest. maintaining a positive and progressive agenda against the cuts. We are investing, particularly in West Hampstead, in 3 specific areas. We're investing in new school places, we're investing in new homes, and we're investing in new jobs. In terms of new school places, there's not a better place that we could begin that conversation than here in Emmanuel School, in which we've invested £9 million in redeveloping this building. And it's a great result, but we need to do more. Parents in the local area are telling me that they are having to homeschool their children or drive to Kensington and Chelsea to find places that we can't provide here in Camden. So the Labour Party is looking to provide 420 new places in Little Road by 2016, much needed places. In terms of new homes, you know that there is a great shortage of housing in this city in general. And Labour is pledging to build 6,000 new homes by 2018 to try and increase the supply and improve that for local people. We are also looking to ensure that every development that is happening under the Labour Council will deliver 50% of truly affordable housing. And that's something that's really dear to us. And we're very pleased that the West Hampstead Square development is going to be seeing affordable housing of that kind. But it's not just people getting on the property ladder that's important. It's also people in the private rented sector. I've been speaking to residents who are facing 8%, 9%, 10% rises. And that's just not right. The wages are not doing anything like that, as you know. So the Camden Labour Party will ensure that there is a registry of landlords to make sure that Camden's landlord-tenant relationships are fine. And finally, in terms of investing in jobs, the greatest opportunity for us remains around the O2 Centre development. Your Labour team here in West Hampstead is going to be making sure that there's enough office spaces and workshops that go into there to bring in business. We've already installed Wi-Fi in the local area to increase local business, and that's something that we're very proud of. And we've put every person working in the council on the London living wage. Labour believes in fair work and fair pay. And I'm really proud to say that in spite of the cuts, in spite of all the challenges, we have done that by being the first council that has frozen your council tax for 4 consecutive years, the first council in Camden's history. So in this election, there's a clear choice. There are the parties who are cutting in West Hampstead, and there is a party that is investing in West Hampstead. And that is why, on the 22nd of May,
of bringing prices down, and also introducing new innovative ways of managing property. And the Green Party is very proud of being the only party that is promoting co-housing and cooperatives of residents as a new way of creating homes and not products for investment, because homes are the places where people should live, not things that you should put for investment in the stock market. There are other areas in which we would like to work, and those include road safety and environmental projects, community projects, in which we would actually measure pollution and make sure that we have a cleaner air for London. And also there's a new initiative happening because of the Mayor of London, which is the ultra-low emission zone. And at the moment, that doesn't include the whole of Camden. And as the Green Party representative, I can say that we, all candidates, are really pushing forward and lobbying so that the area is also included in this ultra-low emission area. So, because we had just very recently news about how pollution is increasing, it's not going down, and if you have taxis, for example, or buses that don't pollute as much as traditional means of transport, then that pollution can go down. That's it. Thank you.
Next we have Magnus Nielsen from UKIP. Magnus,
thank you. Can you, those who can all hear me, can you? Right, well, as you've no doubt gathered, in this election, UKIP is very much the new kid on the block, so I think really it behoves me to introduce myself before I start talking about my party. It freaks some people out that I have a name like Magnus Nielsen when I'm a British citizen and I don't speak a word of Danish. To explain that, as I'm sure most of you know, that on the 4th of August 1914, a war broke out between Britain and Germany. And as a result, a lot of the young men living in the countryside went off to the trenches. Denmark wasn't actually directly involved in the First World War, but my grandfather responded to an advertisement which was calling for labour on the English farms, on account of the fact that this country could have been starved into submission if it didn't have a proper workforce. So, very simply, my grandfather came to England and started work on the farm. We all thought at that time that the Great War was just going to last for about 3 months or so. And it dragged on for 4 years, and millions of people were killed, and my grandfather was here for rather longer than he thought. But nevertheless, he eventually married his boss's daughter, or at least one of his younger daughters, and the rest is sort of family history. On my mother's side, my grandfather and my grandmother were very much involved in the formation of the Labour Party 100 years ago in the north of England, in County Durham. And my aunt was actually the secretary of the northern branch of the Labour Party for the whole of the north of England. So I have that idea of actually, it's in my blood, as it were, to belong to the formation of new parties, and that's really why I'm in UKIP. But what really interests me about UKIP is that I see the problems with the lack of democracy in the European Union. I originally voted to go into, to stay in what was then the Common Market in 1975. I'm that old. And then having voted, I started to realise as I went on that, in fact, all the promises that were then made were just being steadily betrayed. And we've now got to the state of the point where we are now tied up to an organisation which is so corrupt that the accounts haven't been signed off by the auditors for 19 years. So that is really why I want to pull Britain out of the European Union. I do think, actually, that what we do need in Europe is something like a Commonwealth of European nations, but that is something to take place once we've got out and when the European Union has collapsed, because the disenchantment with Europe is rife across the continent, especially in the southern states of Europe. So my work, I'm a tour guide, I'm a professional blue badge guide. I take people around the country, I take people around London on panoramic tours. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a private tutor. I tutor children and I teach them English and things like grammar and spelling and punctuation. It looks as if I've run out of time, I'm sorry.
And lastly, we have Dave Pearce from the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. 1 second to set you up.
Hi, I'm David Pearce. I'm standing for Tusk. I've lived in West Hampstead for the last 14 years. Before that, I've lived all around London, including various areas in Camden. I've lived in private rented, I've lived in council. I've seen the low quality of both types of accommodation. Yes, I agree. We need to register landlords. We need to look at rent controls, because at the moment, rents are going up. Now, Tusk is against cuts, but we're not against cutting rents. We're not against cutting pay. At the moment, councils are starting to use people on 0-hour contracts. Now, I'm not saying it's our council, but this is a scary trend that is spreading around the country. People are losing the security of pay. These people are also ending up receiving benefits to back them up. They're receiving housing benefits, they're receiving state benefits. That is coming from our money. Yes, I used to be a nurse. Now I'm a government scrounger. Yes, I said I'm a scrounger. I'm on disability. So I'm taking money from you, but I want to give something back. In this election, we're not important on this side. It's you. We're representing you. We are going to all try, whoever gets in, to stand up for you. I will do my best to fight for everyone in West Hampstead, whether it's over the council selling off properties. Now, I understand that the Travis Perkins building is coming up to be sold off. The council's fire selling properties that they could use to bring in income. They're bringing in money for now, ignoring the future. Money from rent, from council property, will take money long term off your council tax bill. What they're doing fire sale, we're getting money off now, next week, next year, 10 years' time, what's going to happen? The council will have nothing left, and that comes to you. You're going to be paying for it. Tusk is against cuts, as I said, and that's cuts for everyone, whether they're private tenants, council tenants, whether they're businesses. We all stand up for everyone, because everyone here, everyone in West Hampstead, everyone in Camden has rights to be heard. Whether I agree with their political views or not, my role, if I get in, is to stand up for you. Thank you.
Right, so that was everyone's 3-minute spiel. We're now, as you'll see from the agenda, the idea now is that we're going to have about 3 or 4 questions that I think cover some of the big topics that are relevant here. I'll ask the candidates to be as brief as they can in their answers, given the numbers of you and the time, and ideally one person per party to answer. And after we've done that, then we'll throw it open to the floor. So it's about an hour's worth of floor time. But I wanted to make sure we covered at least 3 or 4 of these big issues as well. So I'll put my clock away. There's also only, there's deliberately only 1 microphone for these guys, so they can't all interrupt each other. There was supposed to be 2 microphones for you, we're going to have 1. Microphone's not been there in the evening. I'm going to kick off with one of the contentious issues of the last few months, which is the rubbish on the streets. The background to this, I'm sure you all know, around the time of the recycling changes, there was coincidentally perhaps a huge increase in litter and fly tipping in the area. There was a little bit of a clampdown. There have been some fines in the West Hampstead ward area. There's been only 1 fine in Fortune Green. Those of you who live in Fortune Green might be surprised by that, given the fly tipping. So the question to the candidates is simply, what's your strategy for cleaning up the streets? Who would like to start? I'm going to open this one open. Natalie.
Hello, good evening. As Jonathan rightly mentioned, there's only been 1 enforcement notice in Fortune Green. I think, according to Camden Council's website, there have been 33 enforcement notices by West Hampstead Station. £800,000 has been taken out of the street cleaning budget. This has resulted in 100 fewer street cleaners over the last 4 years. Despite money being taken out of the street cleaning budget, the current council does still print a hard copy magazine, which costs 6-figure sums. We would reinstate weekend street cleaning. This would only cost approximately £500,000. Our leader, the Camden Conservatives, has already taken this forward proactively and sought ways to make up that money, both through looking to make revenue through advertising throughout the borough, and also by cutting down on council current waste. We also note that the council does have a contract with Veolia at the moment. That does not mean that this is excusable and our current state of affairs is excusable. If you look across the road at Westminster, Westminster also has a contract with Veolia, and that is markedly more rigidly enforced, and there's a higher standard of services given to the residents of Westminster. Is that right? Yeah. Sorry, there's more later if you want.
I know it's tempting to carry on. I'm going to put you hand in the air.
Well, I certainly agree that 1 littering notice in Fortune Green is not really commensurate with the huge numbers of littering notices around the south of the borough. However, we have said that we would put 300,000 back into street cleaning. This is not necessary to increase the number of weekly collections, because I think most of us have got used to the 1 weekly collection instead of 2 over a number of years. I would like to see that money go directly into better supervision of the crews that collect our rubbish. Because so often the problems that we hear about are somebody comes along, collects all the rubbish, and 5 minutes later the street is littered with stuff that's fallen out of the bins, and nobody is bothering to say to the crews, you're not doing a clean job. You're not putting the bins back where they ought to be. You're not clearing up after yourselves. It is always down to lack of supervision as much as anything. Camden do have some very, very good waste recycling officers, but they aren't necessarily given the amount of freedom that they should have. We do have them, we do call them out, and they are pretty responsive when you contact them. I've got numerous examples. My entire phone is full of pictures of rubbish. My family think I must be mad because every time I go out, I take a picture of a fly tip or a litter bin which is overfilling. There aren't always enough bins in some of the private properties, and one of the schemes that we've been involved in is trying to get estate agents to hand out to new tenants in private properties lists of Camden's collection times, of what can be recycled, because they're coming to Camden from somewhere else. They don't know what we can put in our bins and what the various bins are for, or the days they're coming. So we would like to see that sorted out by estate agents, giving them a form when they sign up their contract.
Thank you. Richard? Yes. I have the pleasure of living round the corner from the Minster Road recycling point, so I get a daily dose of what fly tipping can be like. Certainly the council can improve how efficiently it provides a service, and sadly we're not able to spend as much on it as we have before. It's a simple fact of the consequence of the cuts that have been made to Camden Council's budgets and the priorities that the council leads. Listening to other parties saying, well, yes, we'd spend more on it and so on, well, that's great, I wish we could too. What they don't explain is what they would cut instead in order to fund it. In certain practical things, you can look at where recycling points are sited. The one at Minster Road could perhaps go round the corner onto Westfield Road, where it's more visible and can have a greater deterrent effect on fly tippers. And on the question of fly tippers, fining, well, some people might want hanging. But it's important to note that across the whole of England, there were 711,000 incidences of fly tipping. The number of prosecutions is 2,200, 0.3% of the total number of incidents. And I don't think it's all down to Camden not being able to follow through on that.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to go to one of the Ivy Green Party candidates.
Well, as I said at the beginning, one of the things that people standing on this side should do is make things easier for you. So one of the things that you may have noticed is that it's not that easy to actually report if you see littering on the street or how it could be sorted. And there could be easier ways that this could be done. It's not that expensive to actually have something on your phone, an app or something that you download, and then it can be sent to the waste department so that it gets sorted quick. It doesn't really cost that much money, so it's not about spending lots of money. Yeah.
Okay, good. Short answer, I like it. Dave,
I think all of us know that there's major problems just coming down West End Lane.
Stand up, please.
Sorry. Just down West End Lane tonight, I saw 5-6 bags that were just dumped, lying around, not business waste, they're tiny bags that were just dumped on the road. I see fly tipping on almost every street. It's reported. If you can actually get the council to listen to you, how long before they come? Stuff's left for weeks and nothing's done. We need to look at a proactive way of dealing with the rubbish, littering, house collecting. Recycling, there's loads of stuff that can be recycled. Half the fly tip stuff is recyclable, but most councils don't recycle things like fridges and freezers. The metal is recyclable. Recycle more. It's not up to us to recycle, it's up to the council to actually push for what can be recycled. Recycle more, less waste. Thank you.
Agnes, do you want to contribute?
Yes, thank you. I have to, when I'm sort of posed with questions like this, I have to ask, well, who is it exactly who's throwing all the litter about? Is it people from other parts of London? Is it other people from other parts of Camden? Or is it people from the neighbourhood? And if so, how are we going to deal with that question? I was very much inspired after the riots that we had, I think it was 3 years ago, when which you know, in the August of 2011. But after those riots had taken place, people came out to clear up. And I would like to think there might be some sort of scheme that could be organised whereby young people could be actually encouraged to go out and help with the cleaning up. I mean, I don't suppose that's a universal answer to everything, but it's something I would certainly like to explore.
I can use this now, it's great. Okay, thank you everyone. We had a good range of answers. I think cost, obviously an issue, and whether or not there are cost savings to be made, and whether there's renegotiation with the earlier as well to be had. And I think the idea of there's been a lot of talk on Twitter certainly of using more technology, using apps, for example, as Swan was saying, to make reporting these problems easier so that the council officers that Flick was referring to can come and clear the stuff up. So it's not an easy problem, but interesting to hear what everyone has to say. We're going to move on to another kind of contentious issue of schools. Get a bit of background for you. There is a need for primary school places in the area. No one's arguing that. There is an argument about the need for secondary school places. Camden is under obligation to provide school places for everyone in the borough. There is, however, an application that's just gone in for a free school, a primary and secondary free school in the area. There's a question about where it will be, how big it will be, and lots of other issues, and issues about which parties are supporting it. The question, therefore, simply is, how would your party ensure sufficient school places for all children in these two wards? I started Conservatives last time, so sorry Andrew, I'm going to start with John this time.
Good evening everyone. Many colleagues in the room will probably already understand that there is a proposal currently still live to use the Little Road site, which some people may not know is just off Maygrove Road, which is a business park at the moment, as a site for a expanded primary school. Part of that plan is to destroy around 200 jobs. Our Labour colleague was saying they're trying to expand jobs. No, they're not. They're actually trying to remove all the businesses off Little Road. They're also trying to expand Kingsgate Primary School, a very good school, Kilburn, and then make all the parents trundle their children up West End Lane through the peak period, the infant children, to have them at the Little Road site, and then send the junior school kids back to Kingsgate Primary School, and it's about a mile apart. We think that for educational reasons is wrong. You do not put in a deliberate transition at the age of 7 for pupils to go to a different school. Across London, when we've had infant and junior schools in different sites, all the trend has been to try and bring them together on one site. And here we have a Labour Council trying to split up a school and send children to different levels at different places. And the Little Roads proposals, as they stand at the moment, are due to make a profit for the council, because it would be funded by a lot of private housing with no social housing at all. There's not the 50% in that scheme at all, as was promised by the Labour colleague here. And indeed, the decision to proceed with that, to make a profit on that, was then followed by the coalition government giving the council £6 million to build a school. Did they change the plans to introduce some social housing or to introduce a bit more of the business park afterwards? No. They're going to make £9 million profit and then spend that money somewhere else in the borough. Well, that is the Labour Party for you.
Thank you, John. Andrew, how do you want to hand up?
We are also completely against Little Road as a site for a school. It will lose 200 jobs, and there are other appropriate sites for a school in West Hampstead. But I want to talk about more generally the need for a new secondary school in the area. We have a very clear manifesto commitment that we will support a new secondary school in West Hampstead. And we're also nationally the party that supports free schools, and we see no reason why in principle you can't have a new free school in West Hampstead. Now, there's been lots of debate about whether there's an immediate need for secondary school places. The reality is that we're going to have 1,000 new homes in this area over the next few years. And also, I think it's common ground that there's a shortage of primary school places. So for us, the debate isn't really, do we need a new secondary school? It's when we need that secondary school. And free schools give massive advantages for parents. It gives you choice. It gives you the opportunity to set up a school with a different form of curriculum, with its own rules. And for us, choice is a key advantage. That said, I think it's very important that any free school or any new school in this area has strong and effective governance, and that's the same for any school. It's also key to remember that we can have these debates about what kind of school we have, academies, free schools, local authority schools. At the end of the day, and having been a teacher myself, I've got some experience of this, what it comes down to is just having a good teacher in front of the class, whether that's in a free school, an academy, or a local authority school. And the Conservatives nationally have done a lot of work to improve good quality people coming into teaching and improving the quality of teaching nationwide. And I think since the Conservatives came into power, 250,000 pupils have gone out of failing schools into good schools. So that's our commitment for education in West Hampstead.
Thank you, Andrew. Green or Labour? So Green first, Labour second. Layla.
Hi everybody. For the Green Party, I think, yes, absolutely, we do support the free schools. However, there's an accountability issue in the free schools that we're sort of trying to process at the moment, which means there needs to be critical thinking and critical teaching in these schools. What we would say for the future for people in Fortune Green, there is enough expertise, professional people to create communities of practice to build those schools upon, and that's what I personally believe is the future of education in the area, and is to build upon the fact that people already have a very expertise in their area. So, thank you.
Thank you. Labour, Richard.
Thank you. As someone whose child was educated in Fortune Green Ward, first at Beckford and then at Hampstead. Right. As someone whose child was educated in Fortune Green Ward, first at Beckford Primary and then at Hampstead Secondary, just in recent years, education is a subject that's personally close to my heart, and I'm sure it is to Phil as well, whose children went to Hampstead too. What we're looking for is a sensible approach to how you provide school places. Yes, there does seem to be a rare consensus that there's a need for primary school places in this area. And I would commend Labour's proposal for Liddell Road. It's a robust proposal, supported by the head teacher, and we often hear that we should let teachers get on with it and so on, so we could at least begin with perhaps respecting the position of the leadership of that school, an outstanding school. It has a robust funding stream. The Liberal Democrats might not like it, but they cannot deny that the money is available to fund it. It has a site, not just a website, and it will work. As regards secondary school places, there is as yet no robust statistical evidence to show that there is a need for not just a free school in this area, but yet another one. Because there's 3 planned for Brent. There's a temporary one in NW6. And it will do no one any favours to have another free school that will end up unsubscribed, like 38% of them that the Public Accounts Committee identified, leading to spare capacity in all the free schools and the undermining of a good, improving secondary in Hampstead. And I would have thought that at least the Liberal Democrats would take some heed from their own national president, who today has said it's about time that local authorities should be given precedence over free schools in the provision of where places are needed. And people who are campaigning for a free school should be asking themselves, how soon will it be before they get left high and dry by the Liberal Democrats?
Thank you very much. I suspect schools will come up in questions from the audience as well. Magnus, Dave, do you want to add something? You have a view on free schools? Schools generally? Schools generally, I mean, I can see the importance of primary education, which I think is a very much neglected area. And if you don't get the beginnings right, if you don't put the foundations down correctly, then the rest of the structure isn't going to stand up. And I think that is really the fundamental problem with the educational system in this country. I could talk at great length. As I've told you, I'm a private tutor. That's how I make my money. I go and teach the children of a very rich Russian oligarch. And I teach them English language, and I teach them spelling and punctuation and grammar, and they love it, and their parents love it because they know that's what going to make them successful. And people say, well, why don't you teach the disadvantaged and the poor? And I would love to do that too, but I'm not the sort of person that fits into the conventional educational system. So I'm have to be content with what I have, the situation which I'm in. This is how I make my money. But I am interested in quality in education, and that's something I will be very interested to pursue when I become councillor.
Thank you. And finally, Dave.
The local development forums actually said with the increasing population over the next 20 years, this area is going to need 2 to 3 new primary schools. At the moment, we're low on funding, but we need to be planning for the future as well as planning for now. If we're going to need more primary schools, that means we're going to need more secondary schools. Do we wait? Do we wait till we've got even less money, or do we plan for the future? I personally say we need to plan for the future. We need to, even if the buildings have redundancies for now, can those redundancies be used for other purposes? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Slight change of plan. I did have a couple more questions, but this is all taking obviously a little while. So I think it's important we hear from you guys. So we're going to go straight to the questions from the audience. We do have a microphone for you. Whether it works is a whole other story. Nikki over by the kitchen has the microphone. It should be on. If Tom can unmute it. Can you just test it?
Testing.
Yeah, that works. A bit louder. Question from John, right at the back.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Could I just ask about something that's going to affect this borough and this constituency at the next election more than most issues around the country? What do the parties, and particularly the local candidates, think about the proposal for the so-called mansion tax here? Because this is an area that's going to be potentially hit by it more than virtually anywhere else in the country and the surrounding areas here. So I think it's important that we can hear what we think at the local level about it.
Okay, who wants to take the mansion tax question? Keith, like a rabbit out of desperate to answer.
I thought I'd take this one on the chin. It's a big issue. London's a part of the country where a lot of people either own homes that have unexpectedly increased in value after living there all their lives, or people work very hard to buy homes and don't want to see an additional tax on it. We, in the Liberal Democrat group here, have made this point repeatedly to our national party. We're really pleased that Danny Alexander, our man at the Treasury, has announced a change of policy on the mansion tax, that he wants to scrap the idea of the mansion tax proposal, recognising that it's an unfair tax, and instead to introduce a couple of extra bands at the top of council tax, which seems a far fairer system. As at present, it doesn't matter if your home's worth 600,000 or £6 million, you pay the same. So I'm very pleased that the efforts that we've made as a local party here have paid off, and the Lib Dems are listening and have changed the policy. Thank you.
Would anyone else like? I'm not going to get every party to answer every question, or we'll be here all night. So, Tom.
Thank you very much. Well, Keith, it's great to hear that the Lib Dems have done a U-turn on their own policy that they proposed just a couple of years ago. Although Labour have taken up the mantle, the Conservative Party is against a mansion tax because in London, it's a tax on London essentially. And I know that the idea is to hit the rich, but the fact is, in London you'll have a lot of homes that are not owned by the super rich, but because of house price rises, will get dragged into the thresholds, and you can have a situation where someone is cash poor being hit with a very large annual bill. And we don't think that that's the most sensible way to raise money from the rich. Far better to have higher rates of stamp duty that this government has put into place. We think that's a much better way of raising money from the super wealthy.
Thank you. Phil.
Well, the first thing I'd say is that I on this occasion, do agree with the Liberal Democrats about the need to actually reform council tax. That it would make sense to have additional bands above the current level. But having said that, I'd just like to refer you to the Tories' leaflet on mansion tax, and I'll just read you a little bit. It says, you may have heard about the mansion tax. Labour leader Ed Miliband said he would introduce it, and the Lib Dems approved it at their 2012 conference by 200 votes to 2. That's some U-turn. What? They would tax the excess value of all properties over £2 million. It says, in Camden, an average semi-detached house is worth over 2.8 million. That's according to the Tories here. Given that, at a tax rate of 1%, somebody living in a £2.8 million house would have to pay an extra £5,000 a year. Well, I'm sorry, but if this country is in the dire financial state that it is, which is affecting local councils like Camden in the way that it is, I'm quite prepared to vote for a mansion tax. I think it would be a really good idea.
Can I hear from the Green Party and then the question over there?
To be honest, I don't know what's the official position of the Green Party on mansion tax. But I'm going to tell you what I think. It was only yesterday or the day before that the news told us that the UK has had an increase in the number of billionaires. So the country is having more billionaires, but it's also having more people on food banks. It is a country in which inequality is growing, and I think something has to be done about it. So I'm not against mansion tax. I totally support it, but I also think that there are other ways in which inequality could be fought. And it's actually in the Green Party manifesto for the local elections that we support land value tax, which is a different type of tax, and it is based on the value of the land where the properties are built. And there may be other ways, like higher council tax bands, which I also think is a sensible idea. But the thing is that there's not one solution to a huge problem, which is inequality, and there should be a whole array of solutions that parties should be proposing.
Thank you very much. Question here, Nikki, the microphone is heading your way.
Hi. The Camden's complaints procedure is outstandingly bad. It really is bad beyond belief, beyond measurement. Would the candidates be willing to back the destruction of the complaints process as it now exists? It needs to be burnt to the ground, and it needs to be given to somebody who cares. And I would suggest Sainsbury's. Also, I think it's very important that candidates belong to the area. Could each candidate say whether they actually live in the area in which they aspire to represent?
Okay, well, we'll do the complaints issue first. I think actually all the candidates' addresses are on Camden's website, so you can go and look at that. I think it might be easier than everyone going through and giving you... Yeah, okay, show of hands is a good idea, Dan, thank you. If you live in West Hampstead or... You live in West Hampstead or... You live in West Hampstead or Fortune Green wards, can you raise your hands? So if you don't, most of you do, you don't... Yeah, I know somebody's a local, but not necessarily the wards. Okay, thank you. Okay, back to the issue. This has to go to Labour, obviously, of complaints. Who wants to take this one on? Richard again.
Yeah. I was previously a councillor in the south of the borough, and for my sins I was briefly chair of quality and efficiency, and we did try to have a good complaints service. Complaint services are never perfect. I don't know that I'd go so far as to burn everything down, but if it requires a complete overhaul, then that's what it should get. And I remember reading years ago that various senior managers at British Airways said they welcomed complaints, because that's how you know when your service is going wrong and you can make improvements as a result. Obviously, you wouldn't be happy if you get an avalanche of complaints. So yes, I would be happily to, metaphorically, burn it down and rebuild it and ensure it's responsive.
Would you give it to Sainsbury's?
Well, they can always bid for it.
Okay, Nick.
Thank you, yes. The complaints process, it's great fun, isn't it? You phone up, you go through to an unnamed number, you get shuttled through a whole variety of different numbers. You finally get through to someone who doesn't actually go and is not able to go and act upon your complaint. Instead, they make a note of it and promise to call you back, and then they call you back. Curious enough, I think after 40 years, near as damn it, running the council, you could have got the complaints department right. It's pathetic.
I'm not sure that was how you were going to fix it, but thank you for the point. Nick, Magnus, do you want to say anything as well? You were trying to catch my eye.
Yes, I'm just puzzled to know exactly, what it is that exactly you think is wrong with the complaints procedure. Well, okay, you're not being specific enough. When you have a complaint against the council, surely, please, you come to your councillor, don't you? Your councillor is there. You've been elected the councillor to listen. Well, I beg your pardon, you're electing a councillor to deal with the matters. The councillor is... Well, I think you're going around it the wrong way, if I may say so. I think what you do, if you have a complaint against the council, you first of all go to the councillor in his surgery, or her surgery, and you talk about the issue there, the specific issue, and the councillor is there to help you sort out your issue. I think that's what the whole job is about.
Okay, I think there's some dissent among the ranks as to what the job of the councillor is. Nick, you may have a different view.
Well, it is undoubtedly true that the complaints procedure is dreadful, and that the 444 number that has been introduced by this administration has given all residents the feeling that there is no accountability, that there's no one they can talk to, that they have no control over their environment. I was councillor in Kentish Town until 2010, and I had a long conversation with Mike Cook, who is now the chief executive, when he was head of organisation development, about the problems of the council's levels of service. My background is as an organisation change consultant. We talked about introducing a right first time programme. That has since been introduced by the council, but it's gone for 4 years, and I can't see any improvement. And I speak as a leaseholder of a Camden council property. It is impossible to find who is accountable and the root cause of this problem. And we can talk about complaints, but really the root cause is the quality of service that's provided in the first place. We should not be worrying primarily about improving complaints responsiveness. We should be improving the quality of service and getting it right first time. That means that when somebody in a council flat reports a problem in their flat, somebody is set to come and do it, who has the parts, who knows what is to be done, and it can be completed in one visit instead of 4. If we could do that, the amount of money we could save on housing repairs would remove all the other problems that we have in meeting the council's budget, and that would be our priority as the Lib Dem administration after the election.
Thank you, Nick. I think there are two different types of complaints to the council. There are council tenants and leaseholders who have issues with their buildings generally, and then there are other people who have issues with things like rubbish and fly tipping and the myriad other things. Yes, very brief. If you chip in, Natalie has to chip in if she wants to chip in as well.
This is just about the system. The point is that, yes, somebody comes to see you in your surgery and says, I'm having a dreadful time. It doesn't matter whether it's a repair to the flat issue or whether it's because, let us say for the sake of argument, the library steps hadn't been repaired, which is Peter. The thing is, they come and complain to you and you say, yes, that's absolutely dreadful. I will write to the director and I will write to this and I will do this. And yes, you get a reply saying, we'll look into it, we'll look into it. 6 months later, even if you've chased it, it is then, by that time, upped. You have to go through the council's complaints procedure. Yeah, I'm saying, but there were you said there were 2 different systems. It's the same system. You end up in the council's complaints procedure. And you have to go through your first level complaint, which goes to the person you're complaining about. And then the second stage goes to the supervisor of the person you're complaining about. And it's only till you get to the third stage that you get a senior complaints officer at the council. And as like as not, they will agree with the other two. And then, if you're really pushed, you could go to the Ombudsman. But the Ombudsman is likely to agree with the council. And now for housing, they have to go through a councillor to the Ombudsman. And the whole complaint system is geared not to find in favour of the complainant.
Okay, as I let two demonstrate, I'm going to two Conservatives speak. Natalie, keep it brief, please.
So I completely agree with you. I took a photo of the fridge. It even made Jonathan's weekly roundup. I have used the complaint service. It's still there. Especially given Flick's very detailed narrative of how the complaints process works, it's very clear that what is needed is a top-down, complete reorganisation of the complaints department. If we are elected, or as and when we are elected, we should look to do that. And that's the only way, from what has been said, that can be dealt with.
That fridge has been there for a week. Okay, we're going to go Eugene over there. I know you've got a question. And then gentleman at the back with his hand up. And then James will come to you.
Evening, everyone. I had a question on the manifesto commitment to allow parking on double yellow lines for 15 minutes. Do people think this is liable to cause more congestion and be more dangerous for cyclists and other vulnerable road users in particular? And should not, given that it's designed to encourage people to use local shops for shorter journeys, should not walking and public transport be encouraged by the council instead?
Okay, thank you. We're going to go straight to the Green Party on this one.
Well, that's not in our manifesto. I don't know which party has it. Because you said it's in the manifesto, but I don't know. Ah, right, okay. Well, it's not in ours, so I think the clue is not there, but it's as Leela is saying, I mean, it's not something we would actually support, because I think one of the problems of high streets in local communities, whether it is Fortune Green or in any other areas, is that the more cars you use, the further you will travel. And what we actually want to propose is that you walk, or that there are enough places to park your bike, or that it is easier for you to get there, because that will incentivize people to actually use local services rather than depending on the car. And cars also contribute to pollution and to not help in our agenda for cleaner air. So that's not something that would actually be, well, it's not in our manifesto.
Thank you. I happen to know Eugene got hit by a van the other day, so he's a cyclist of bravado. Who else would like to answer this? Keith, I'd like to come to you afterwards.
Anybody who's seen the situation outside the new shisha bar on Fortune Green Road knows what happens when you allow people to park on double yellow lines. I don't understand actually why that is being allowed to go on. We're seeing for hours on end illegal parking on double yellow lines, when in other parts of the borough, if you have the temerity to park on a single yellow line for 5 minutes, you're towed away. And I speak from bitter personal experience saying that. So double yellow lines are there for a purpose. They really are to prevent obstructions and dangerous situations. And actually just saying you can park on them willy-nilly is ridiculous. But what is needed is a proper review, I think, of all the double yellow lines and all the single yellow lines in Camden. It's very easy to get caught out at the moment. The signage is very confusing, and a full-scale review of that is needed so that people don't get caught out when they make an honest mistake.
Thank you. Magnus, do you want to say something?
Yes, I think realistically any transport policy has to have a mix of different forms of transport. I mean, there are going to be occasions when they're going to have to move a grand piano from Charles Hill down to Maiden Vale. I don't know how else you're going to do it. You're not going to be able to do it on bicycle. But I do think you're going to... I do encourage the idea of bicycles, and I do encourage the idea of people being fit by doing what the human species have been doing for thousands of years of evolution, which is just simply walking around, and perhaps just doing a bit more cycling, I think, would help us. It would also help save on the National Health Service, wouldn't it? We all got more fit.
James?
I have to say this issue seems quite obvious to me. I think double yellow lines, as Keith said, are there for a reason. In Camden and under the Labour administration, we're proud to have made advances in terms of making the streets safer for cycling. There's still a long way to go. I think we need to be proactive in working with local cycling groups. But the work we've done to date, for example, on the award-winning Royal College Street, proves that we have the intent, that we want to improve cycling in the area. We've committed to the Space for Cycling asks, which have been presented to all candidates in West Hampstead and Fortune Green, and I would urge all the other candidates here to do the same, because it's so fundamental that cycling is on the up, and for good reason. And in that sense, we need to be doing as much as we possibly can to make Camden the best borough in London for cycling.
Dave?
Well, anyone that lives around here knows that we've got some truly atrocious roads for both driving, cycling, and for pedestrians and the disabled. West End Lane, we have at the moment 2 supermarkets, which you and two other I understand, and we all know the problems that come when they're getting deliveries. To then allow people to park on double yellow lines is going to congest that road even more. We've already got buses parking just down the road. That's causing problems. We need to free up the flow of traffic to make things easier for the locals. I don't think parking on double yellow lines is going to free it up for locals. I think we need to increase the flow of traffic. We need to make it easier for cyclists, drivers and pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we do have a final comment from the Conservatives, then we'll go to another question.
Thank you. Well, I think what's clear is that the parking situation in West Hampstead and Fortune Green is an absolute nightmare. You've got not enough parking spaces. The spaces that are available are frequently used by people who don't have permits. And the spaces that are also aren't fully used properly. I mean, the Conservatives' main proposal on parking, one of them is that we would actually have 20 minutes of free parking on Mill Lane to support local businesses. But we would like to see NSL Limited, who are Camden Council's contractors for parking, to actually properly enforce parking restrictions where they're in place. And we'd also like to see better use of the unused spaces that exist on many roads in West Hampstead and Fortune Green, so that we really maximise the space that already is there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next question, gentleman at the back.
Yeah, hi. I live on West End Lane. I look out my back window and there's a huge Sainsbury's with a huge car park. And next to it is a Waitrose with a huge car park. I go out my door, I turn right, and I come to a Sainsbury's and a Tesco.
What's the question?
The question is, the deliveries, the lorries that park outside Tesco midday cause tremendous traffic congestion. There's always traffic congestion in West End Lane. What are you going to do about it? And why have we got so many bloody supermarkets?
Okay, I think one of those is a broad socio-economic question about retail, but let's start off with, I know that the Lib Dems have a comment here. Julian, you want to...
I've been campaigning against Tesco lorries since they opened 2 years ago or 3 years ago. They didn't need planning permission to move into that site because it was deemed not change of use. I have been campaigning for them to do something about their lorries since they opened. They tell me, I've spoken to their public affairs people, they say that they are responding to the needs of local people, which are the people who live above Tesco's, who they agree that they would not deliver after 4:30 in the afternoon. So that's why we have lorries coming at all times of the day. They also don't use their own lorries, they use outside suppliers. So that's another problem of trying to plan when the lorries are going to arrive. With Sainsbury's, when Sainsbury's opened, I spent a lot of time with them, and we have no problems with Sainsbury's. They use their own small lorries after 8 o'clock at night or before 7 o'clock in the morning, and we get no complaints from them. We've spoken to Tesco's. I asked a question in full council and found that they'd been given 240 parking tickets in the last year, which amounted to about £18,000. and they don't care, they just pay the money. We're now setting up a petition for local people to sign to go to the CEO to see if they can do something about their parking. The other problem is that we've raised it with Camden Council, and Camden are now trying to negotiate with Tesco's about all the Tesco shops in Camden and get an agreement. But they've said it's going to take another 2 months or so before they get any answer. So I've been battling this for 2 years, and I'm still fighting, and we will get there in the end. But and if we get support from local people, beyond the people who just live upstairs, then that might help.
Thank you. I do understand, you may know more than me, I do understand that the Waitrose application, which is moving into Pizza Express, is delayed because of issues with deliveries. So Camden is kind of trying to enforce that there if it didn't with Tesco's. Nick?
Sorry, just some basic thoughts on this. Gillian, it's been great that you've been doing it for 2 years. I phoned them up today, and they agreed to go and change the delivery times between 10 and 2, so as not to interfere, at least with the rush hour. I thought that was the easiest way to do. Well, it hasn't actually worked.
Given Tesco's just-in-time delivery system, it'll be interesting to see if they stick to that. Anyone else? Okay, I'll take one of you guys. I'll take James, because you've had quite a few.
I think, well, clearly this is a big issue. I mean, over the past 2 years, for the work that I've been doing in the local area, talking to lots of local residents, it's come up. It's come up more than most issues, and I think, despite Gillian's hard work, it comes as a big surprise, really, that in the last, it was only 3 months or so ago that you asked this question about the number of times that they'd made parking infringements, and this is an issue that I've gone to Phil Jones, who's in charge of parking on Camden Council. He's been negotiating with Tesco to create a memorandum of understanding. We've already seen parking notices go down by about 33%, but that's not good enough. We need to go further. And I think we're making good ground on this, and we'd actually like the other parties to help us petition the government to give the council the power to fine corporations who see committing these parking infringements as a sunk cost. They see it as something on their balance sheets. They don't recognise that it affects local people immeasurably. And so this is something we really want to tackle, and I think it'd be good to have support from the other parties to go to the government with that.
Thank you, James. It always slightly confuses me when a company racks up £18,000 worth of fines and isn't prosecuted, because if any of us did that, we'd be prosecuted. So I never quite understood how that works. Okay, I'm going to go. You've already spoken. Not yet. James is next, and we've got a question from Bridget over there from the back. We'll try and bounce around. James.
Thank you. My name's James. I'm the chair of the Fortune Green and West Hampstead Neighbourhood Development Forum. As hopefully most people know, and as hopefully all the candidates know, we're in the final stage of drawing up a neighbourhood plan for the future of Fortune Green and West Hampstead. Lots of people have supported the forum, and I thank them for that. And on behalf of them, I'd like to ask all the candidates 3 very simple questions. Do you support the work of the... It's yes or no answers. So, do you support the work of the forum? Do you support the draft plan? And if elected, or if not elected, do you pledge to campaign for a yes vote in the referendum which comes at the end of the process?
Yes. Okay. Is anyone going to say no to any of those questions? Is that... Phil, you say no, or you... Yes. Okay.
Sorry, there are 3 questions there. The first one was, do we support the work of the forum? Yes, we do. Pay tribute to the tremendous amount of work that has been put in by the people who have been attending the forum from all sides and all parties. The second question that James asks is, will we support the draft of the plan as it is now? And the answer to that is, we can't do that until we actually see the final version of the plan. There is an enormous amount of work still to be done on the plan, as James well knows. He's got, I think, 16 pages of comments from Camden as a starter. which have to be taken account of. And a considerable amount of extra and new work has got to be done. So I think it's a bit, if I can say, naive to ask candidates, I see that the Tories are prepared to back it whatever, to back a plan which is a long way from completion. So while we're very supportive of the process of drawing up a plan, we recognise the work that's been done, we're saying there's a lot more work to be done. When that has been done, then of course it would be sensible for us to say whether or not we support it, and I'm pretty sure we will do if we all have input into it. But I think it's a bit premature to ask the question now. And therefore, the third question, which is, do we support, will we campaign for a yes in the referendum? Certainly we will do that if it is an agreed plan, but it is very contingent, obviously, on the answer to the second question. So I don't want to in any way sound negative, but I do want to say that we need to be logical and sensible about this, get an agreed plan which is deliverable and viable, and then everybody, I'm quite sure, will be able to fall in behind the plan and support it.
Ian or Andrew both wanted to speak. Pick one. Ian, having been on the committee of the NDF, probably shouldn't speak. Andrew, go.
Good evening, everyone. My answer to James's question is very simple. It's yes to all three of them. And I would just like to say to Councillor Turner's point, I was a councillor before, and I can remember what the planning system was like before we had neighbourhood development forums. In the ward that I represented, there was no say whatsoever in planning policy, and this is a forum which gives people the chance to influence how the local area grows. I am all for localism, and I support it 100%.
Anyone else? Dave, you were kind of... Just a quickie from Dave.
Yes, I support the forum. The only thing I would say is I believe there needs to be more room for social housing rather than private housing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a massive change, but social housing is going to be money spent now, it's going to benefit the children of the future. It also needs to be environmentally friendly where possible, ecological, needs to be energy efficient. We don't want crud. I was going to say something else, but I thought, no, there's ladies present. We want decent quality, but that comes from the developers, not from the development forum.
Thank you. Okay, no one else? I think we'll move on to the next question, which you have right over there.
Yes, I'd like to ask a very basic political question about turnout in both areas. I think probably everyone in this room will be voting, but I understand the turnout in both wards is very low, in the 30% range. And I'd like to ask all the candidates of all the parties if you feel you have done everything in your power and are satisfied that you have done everything you could to get out the vote. Especially the vote that is missing, the other 70%, and the young who are really very disillusioned. And if you have done everything in your power, do you feel you've used the new media appropriately and really got hold of people who haven't turned up tonight? Thank you.
Given the only way to publicise on new media. Okay, Leila.
Hello, everybody. No, actually, I don't think we have grabbed onto the media to the best of our capabilities to grab hold of the vote. But I would say this, one point, is, you know, the forefront of this is not necessarily just to vote for the Greens, well it is, but it's to politicise the youth and politicise people to empower them to take control of their environment, of their vote and of their future. And I think that's what the Greens are about as well, and that's what my work is about. So that's what I would answer to that, if that's okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Lorna? I was going to say there actually are Well, there's a younger average age, I would say, here than there was at those area action groups, which is a good sign.
The Labour Party and the Cooperative Party from Fortune Green have knocked on every single door in West Hampstead, some doors more than once, most doors in Fortune Green as well, to engage with the voters. Today we actually visited the student residence block in West Hampstead with a stall encouraging people to register to vote. And we also are active on social media, particularly James, Phil, myself and Richard. So we do believe it is very important for people to vote, and I hope that all of you do vote tonight.
Next there was Phil, get on social media. Keith?
Yeah, thank you. I think actually we should congratulate Jonathan actually on really bringing social media alive in West Hampstead. And actually lots of the people here are very active on Twitter in particular and Facebook, and so I think we've tried very hard. I think what we do know is it's very hard to use traditional media to get people to actually engage in traditional ways, new media to get people to engage in traditional ways of doing things. We found that out to our cost with the area forums. We found that people who enjoy using Twitter don't want to come along to meetings in drafty halls on rainy nights. And so we really have to think about ways of taking it beyond meetings. And I think all of us, frankly, all the politicians are making an effort to drive up turnout. Bridget, it's the one thing we've probably all got in common, that we do more to drive up turnout than anybody else. Sometimes, the Camden officers take pride in some of their schemes to drive up turnout. It has negligible impact compared with politicians knocking on doors and dragging people out. And you know how we all sit outside the polling stations on election day and taking your numbers? That's because we're going to go and knock on the doors of the people who haven't arrived and haven't given us their numbers. Well, we really do want people to vote. So I can honestly say, yeah, we've done as much as we possibly could. If we did anything more, I think we'd be in an early grave. So, thank you.
Thank you. Nancy wants to chip in.
I'm particularly not very happy because I think what is missing in West Hampstead when I go to meetings is the lack of representation of other ethnic minorities, and I do not want to be the voice that speaks for that. But I'm challenging everyone who's here, because I'm a resident of West Hampstead, that we should do more to encourage our neighbours to actually participate in the process, because we all pay our rates.
Does anyone have anything actually different to add? Too late for you, Phil. Is this actually a new point, Andrew? It's got to be quick then.
All I would say is that in addition to all of that, we've been holding regular street stalls every weekend. We're outside Cafe Nero. And one thing which we have done, which I think is really important, everyone's saying it's very difficult to communicate with Camden. I think if you read our manifesto, that's one of the key messages that comes through it. And what we've done, for example, if there's a planning application, we put out a street letter all year round letting people know there's a planning application, here's the reference number, here's the officer you need to speak to, so that people can be engaged not just at election time but throughout the year.
Okay, I'm not sure the planning application number is going to appeal to all the young people in West Hampstead. Yes, that's a good point. I think the idea is everyone is in favour of encouraging voter turnout. Seems to be the message. Magnus, you want to?
Yes, I just wanted to add that it's extremely exasperating for people in my position who are trying to recruit people who are so disillusioned with the voting system and have been, because so much power has been taken away from ordinary people and it's been going off to unelected bureaucrats in Brussels and I suppose in Whitehall, but the power is being taken away from the people. Now, I have reflected on this over a period of time, and I have drawn, I wouldn't say conclusions, but ideas about this situation, which I say are my ideas. I wanted to emphasise these are my ideas, these are not the ideas of Nigel Farage or the party or anybody else who's standing for UKIP. I sometimes think the people who fought for the vote in 1832 and in 1888 and so forth, trying to extend the franchise, are probably doing the wrong thing. And generally speaking, when you start taking things away, or you threaten to take things away, people start clamouring and say they really want it. So I'm just wondering if for instance, you know, if people have been to jail, perhaps and they lose their vote, the answer is, I just think perhaps we should start reducing the franchise. I personally, and I'm not saying this on behalf of the party I belong to, or anybody else, we are a broad party with all sorts of a mixture of ideas. I think you'll make the vote more interesting if you show that people could actually lose the right to vote if they start committing crimes and they don't. So I'm just reflecting along these ideas. I haven't reached a conclusion, but that's where my mind is going.
Okay, that's the usual stance. Dave wants to comment, and then we'll take the next question.
Right. No, we can never do enough to make people vote. I was actually part of the 38 Degrees initiative to go around, knock on doors and try and get people to sign up and register to vote. Now, it's supposed to be impartial, so I couldn't do it in West Hampstead. I could have, but don't think it'll be fair. I went around Fortune Green, got 4 forms back. I don't know how many of those that didn't return forms aren't even registered to vote because not everyone was in. They were in nice shiny plastic folders that would be wonderful slipping hazards, mind you. But no, nobody here, nobody out there can ever do enough to encourage people to vote. We have to keep trying.
Thank you very much. Does anyone here agree with Magnus, by the way, that we should restrict the franchise? No. Okay. Okay, next question. People have had hands up, they've all put them down again. I'm not doing party people if I can avoid it, because that seems unfair. Okay, I'll come to you next. I'm going to Nadia first, and I'll come around you. So I'm going to do what Keith always says at Area Action Groups, which is if I call you at my name, it's just because I know lots of people. So apologies if I don't know your name.
Hi, I'm going to give you a choice of 2 questions. And
Just pick one, Nadia. Just pick one.
Okay, pick one. Okay, so the Travis Perkins building opposite the Thameslink. I know as well as you do that if there's a political will, there's a way. So I'd like to hear from each of the parties what your vision is for what that building could be. Because we know that if you want it to be something good for the community, we could make it that, or you could make it that. So I'd like to hear what your ideas are for West End Lane.
Okay, 156 West End Lane, aka Travis Perkins building. A lot of conferring going on here to be not in a manifesto. Who wants to go first? John.
Lane is laid to be demolished. Unfortunately, the shortlist for the preferred bidders ended up with somebody who didn't actually put a bid in that met the criteria for the bids in the first place. So there seems to be some wild difficulties within the council, let us say, about the way they've come to a final bidder. But really, that should be a public space. It should be a public service building. And certainly, given our earlier debate about school places, it appears to me that while the little road sign might be good for a primary school, 156 West End Lane could well be a good space for a secondary. And it seems to me that certainly a public function should be based on that road, close to all the public transport links and so forth. And it appears to me that while we're looking for a space for a secondary school, it wouldn't be such a bad idea to use 156 West End Lane.
One to the school, going to go down the line, Lorna.
Labour understands that there is a housing crisis, therefore we have decided to use the sale from the building to turn it into housing. I understand that it was actually reviewed and was deemed not suitable to be a secondary or primary school by the council. The money used from the sale of public land will be invested in the Community Investment Programme, which is a council-wide programme to invest across 57 schools in the borough, providing much support to education and also to help council tenants and council housing.
Okay, one school, one housing. Okay, jump over here.
I think first of all it's a shame that it's been left empty for the last 2.5 years, having security guards making sure it doesn't go to complete kind of rack and ruin. Going forward, we would have liked to have seen already it being used for apprenticeships, small workshops, pop-up shops, helping kind of local, either freelance residents or local business owners. Going forward, we would want to develop it so that it is at least half genuinely, objectively affordable housing, and the other half be used to foster local apprenticeships and again encourage local businesses and other pop-up shops.
Well, I'm just surprised that there's empty space and actually the council is not coming with 100 plans of what they could do with this space. Because I work for a university and you learn to do things without money. And having a space and not using it is like, why? And one of the things that the Green Party proposes, not just for that building, but for any space that we can use, would be to perhaps reverse the cuts. There are groups in the borough, disability groups, that have had their funding cut. So there's a space, and you cut the funding, and you are not actually inviting them to use the space. Why not? Then it could also be used for social housing, but not just that. There's a deficit of social enterprises in the area. There's also a deficit of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs. So why not create workshops and entrepreneurship hubs that can actually promote a different type of business? Is that I can come up with like 200 ideas of what to do with the building. I just don't understand why the council is not doing anything.
Gentleman on my left hand has just stolen my thunder.
Green UKIP Alliance.
At the moment, we're looking at losing loads of business space at Liddell Road. We've got small businesses that could quite easily be moved into the Travis Perkins building. I'd like to see it mixed use, social housing, preferably some accessible housing, because we have loads of elderly and disabled people in the area, but there's no disabled access. Going round the houses round here, going up 15, 20 steps to the front door, somebody who's got walking problems isn't going to manage that. So, yeah, social business, mixed use.
Okay. Next question, gentleman at the side.
We've heard about mansion taxes, and with that last question on the use of the Travis Perkins building, we touched briefly on affordable housing. I'd like to know what each of the parties mean by affordable housing in the context of the local area.
Okay, Bill, hand up like a rocket there.
Well, just very briefly, as you may or may not know, according to Boris Johnson, affordable housing is housing which can be let at 80% of the private market. That, to Camden, certainly to me, is absurd and should be changed immediately. Needless to say, Boris Johnson will not do that. Camden is in the process of trying to find a way round that dictation from Johnson, because it makes no sense in a place like Camden. We all know what market rents are. To take 80% of that and then say that's affordable is patently absurd. And therefore, I hope all of the people in this room who care about poor people and people who are in housing need will join with us in campaigning against that policy, because it is disgraceful.
I have been on Camden's Development Control Planning Committee for a large number of years, and some years ago we decided on the planning committee, cross-party, that we wanted to aim for 50%, quote, affordable housing in any new development. In the days when we decided we were going to go for this, affordable housing meant something rather different. It actually meant housing which was a social rent that people could afford. It has since slipped upwards to shared ownership and a whole pile of other stuff. One of the problems is that successive governments refused to allow councils to build any more council housing. Therefore, a very corrupt system grew up over housing associations building housing, and they were supposed to have a social housing rent level, but it was considerably higher than the councils. And we still cannot actually borrow enough money to build housing to house all the people that we need to in the borough. So, our planners, and I'm afraid this is probably the same with most inner London boroughs, fall backwards every time there is a new development, and instead of 50% housing, we don't get 25, we're very lucky if we get 10. On the Little Road proposed development by Labour, there will be 2 affordable units, and everything else, and therefore people, sheltered housing or people with disability apparently, everything else will be a private development flat sold to a foreign buyer. Every single one. They will buy them and then they will rent them out at exorbitant rents on the private market. This is wrong, wrong, wrong. And it has to be stopped. And we have to stop in Camden falling over ourselves every time a developer mentions viability. We get deferred payments, or we'll do it later. If the price goes up, we'll pay you a bit more. We're not having it on site though, we'll put it somewhere else. And it's 6 units, 10 units, something derisory. And Camden isn't helping. When they say they'll build 60,000 homes, was it 60,000? 6,000. Well, it's all pie in the sky anyway, because they aren't going to build 6,000. Some developer is going to build 6,000.
I'm not sure that answers the question. I'm very confident we are very tight on time. I'm going to let Conservatives answer this question, and I think I'm going to stop. I've got one final question for everyone, and then we have to leave sort of on time. So I'm sorry if this is wrapping up quickly. We'd love to have stayed longer. Quick answer, please, Andrew.
I will try to be very, very quick. I'd just like to point out to Phil Tennant that Boris will have built by 2015 55,000 affordable homes over London. I do agree with clickbait. Well, those are the facts. And the thing is, I do agree with Councillor Ray on the point with Little Road. If Camden Labour is serious about affordable housing, they would not be pushing through this scheme in Little Road, which has next to no affordable housing whatsoever, and they are funding it through luxury housing.
Okay, it's going to be one sentence.
Right, so very simple. I may need more English lessons, but affordable to me means something that people can pay. And to say that affordable is 80% of the value of a home in the market, that to me doesn't say whether people can pay or not. At the moment, for example, rent is 66% of the average income in Camden is £1,700, £1,700. And the same with the value if you want to buy a home, because it is 15 times the average income. That to me is not affordable. Affordable means that people can pay for it.
Okay, thank you very much. We have about a minute left. I want to ask one final question, which I hope you will all think is reasonable. There's a view often, I think, that up here in the northwest of the borough, we are somewhat neglected, because so much of Camden is such an unusual borough. We have, right down from the King's Cross area, British Museum, British Library, these icons of London. And yet here we are up in West Hampstead and Fortune Green, and I think it can feel a bit remote. And some of you mentioned that in your 3-minute speeches. What I'd like is a really quick, and I mean quick, 30 seconds ideally, from one person from each party, how you will fight for this corner, this literal corner of Camden, whatever party ends up in power in Camden. I'm going to start, I'll go the same order we did last time. Nancy's got a hand up. Very short, Nancy.
Actually, I'll first of all say we actually fought very hard to ensure Cricklewood and the Northwest to remain part of Camden when the commissioners wanted to put it into Barnet for elections. That's it. So I fight for Camden to be part of Cricklewood to be part of Camden.
Okay, Phil.
Very simple. It's like this. Well, we have plans for 420 new school places. These parties are not delivering any plans for new primary school places whatsoever. That's one of our commitments. Where these parties have brought forward go home bans, we have new home plans. And where these parties have imposed the bedroom tax, we have brought forward, we've frozen your council tax for 4 consecutive years. We're very keen on investing, as I said, in school places, in housing, and in jobs, and we'll deliver that for you hopefully when you elect us on the 22nd of May. Thank you.
Well done, Steve, thank you for voting there. Conservatives, Nick.
This is a great place. Nobody seems to go and pay much attention to Camden, certainly from the centre of the town. I'd like to go and find a way of actually getting people along here a little bit. Look at West Hampstead, look at the fantastic musical heritage it's got. Can't we go and do something to go and celebrate that? Can't we actually go and say something is good about the place as opposed to whinging about it? What I'd like to do is actually positively promote the area as a place to come along, for people to come along, for example, on the tourist trail.
I don't know who whinges. Anyone here whinge about West Hampstead as a place? Yeah, not sure you've judged the mood there.
Well, I think the unique character of any area depends upon the uniqueness of the people who live in the area. When I look at the people who have actually lived in this area, who've been born in this area, who have chosen this area to live in, I'm looking at names like Doris Lessing, the Nobel Prize winner. I'm looking at people like Joan Armatrading, and I'm looking at Stephen Fry, and all these extraordinary names that are coming out of the media and the television. These are the people who are creating the character of this area, and I think that's an enormous advantage to us.
Thank you. Juan, then Dave, and then I think we're done.
Well, it is in the Green Manifesto that the way the borough is run is not democratic enough, we believe, because it's run as a cabinet-style council, and we believe in the power of committees and building links with the community, whether that's the business community or charities or neighbourhood forums. And that would allow Fortune Green and West Hampstead to build their own identity and to actually have the opportunity to fit in any opportunity or in any process or any new plan that the council may decide to run.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least.
Hi, the only way to fight for the area is to listen to you, to be your voice. Say no to expensive artwork in council offices. Say we want the money. We need this in our area. So that's it. Be your voice. Say no to the cuts to services. Listen to you. Speak up for you.
Thank you very much. And as it's now 9:32, I'm afraid we have to call it a day. Thank you all for coming. A huge thanks to all the councillors candidates, please. I think it's worth remembering that whether or not you agree with them, they're all willing to give their time up to work for you. I think that's always worth respecting, so I'd like to thank you as well. And thank you all for coming to the first ever local hustings, I think, in the area. And we'll see you again for the general election.